So this was the last time she was in her home site. We had been friends since I met her in third grade. Brings back lots of memories. And she didn't know she was what she was gonna have to go through.
My sister had been killed, murdered, abducted by somebody we didn't know. The impressions on Carla's neck, where you could tell hands had been around her neck, and she had literally dug her fingernails into her own flesh trying to get those hands off of her. I thought, was she begging for her life?
How did you kill her? I just choked her.
Knowing that this was the answer that detectives had been looking for the last 46 years. I knew who did this to Carla. And,
So anyway. I loved my father. I still do. Can't stop loving somebody. It haunts me. The thought that my father, which I love so much, could spend an eternity in hell.
Part of my life experience has led me to living with legal blindness. Right here? Okay, thank you. Prognosis is irreversible, and that it will probably only get worse. I miss seeing pictures of my parents, my relatives, my family. So the ones that I can remember are very, very vivid to me. One of my favorite photos that I remember of Carla is that picture of Carla with the hearts, her hair done. I see a girl who's looking at the future, is excited about it, got a life in front of her. Carla was 17 and I was 12. I looked up to Carla. I thought she was beautiful. She was a good student. She was popular. She was a good daughter, good sister. Rodney McCoy was Carla's high school sweetheart. He was just an all-around, all-American boy. Played football for the high school. Rodney would literally light up when he'd see Carla. And Carla would light up when she'd see Rodney. Rodney was a hero to me at that time in my life. High school quarterback, just a nice kid. On that night, Carla and Rodney went out on their Valentine's Day. Pictures were taken and, mom and dad, giving all the advice, be safe, don't drink, y'all have fun, and we'll see you when you get home. And she looked beautiful, just looked like a princess. And they were off, and then the rest of our night was waiting for them to come back to hear about how fun the dance was. It was about 1:45 in the morning, and I heard a car coming up into our front yard. I heard a door screeching open, and I heard Rodney's voice yelling, "Mr. Walker, help me, they've got her. They're gonna hurt her bad, I know they are." Dad immediately started asking him questions, where are y'all at, where's she at? And he's telling her, we're in the parking lot. the west side of the bowling alley. They were kissing. The door jerked open. Rodney said it all happened so quick. According to Rodney, the guy said, "I'm going to kill you," and pointed a gun about 6 inches from Rodney's face. Rodney gets being hit on the back of the head, in front of the head, and he's not sure what's going on. He has no idea. And then Carla is being drug out of the car by this person, and Rodney clearly hears this man say to Carla, "You're going with me, aren't you, sweetie?" And he said he remembers looking at Carla, and he said that's the last thing he saw before he passed out. I just knew something had changed. I knew something horrible had changed, and you know, even right now, I start thinking about that. I get teary-eyed, and yeah. So I knew something horrible had happened. I just didn't really have the life experience to comprehend what I was witnessing. But I knew something horrible had happened. And I know my mom and dad had to feel that way.
When I was shown the Carla Walker case files, there were 4 boxes about this size, 4 of them, full of case file information. It was a case that had been worked over the last 46 years. Numerous detectives had worked on it, and they hadn't found resolution. I wanted to start from the very beginning, broke down the case files, and then start reading all the detective notes from day one. Where Rodney had parked his car, they found Carla's purse out on the ground, and they find this magazine from a Mark I Ruger 22. The magazine release on this particular type of weapon is at the bottom of the grip. It's probably bumped, and the magazine fell to the ground. A purse and a magazine. It's not a lot to work with. Back in 1974, Tarrant County Sheriff's Office, the Fort Worth Police Department, Benbrook Police Department all start this search for Carla. And for the next 3 days, the community gets involved in the search. And there were thousands of people that were searching for Carla. I think there were a lot of people that were optimistic that Carla had been being held somewhere and had been kidnapped. So I know there was a lot of optimism and hope that Carla would have been found alive. At the crime scene where Carla was found, it had been very, very cold. She was very well preserved. She still had her dress on. Carla was abducted, sexually assaulted, and choked just shortly after her abduction and after the sexual assault had taken place. The original investigators did a great job of bagging her hands to collect fingernail scrapings. They bagged her dress, her bra, her panties. And that's pretty much the evidence that was found at the culvert where she was recovered. It's just sadness when you see something this horrific, and think about the crime committed that night and the loss that the family experienced. Losing Carla, this was the end of her life. As far as what I felt about the case and who the offender was, it's typically somebody that's close to your victim. So, quite honestly, I felt that it was going to be somebody that knew Carla and was close to Carla. In going through all of the case files, I had actually developed a list of 85 suspects. And this ranged from friends of Carla, ex-boyfriends of Carla, people that had called in. I really did feel, with all of the work that the detectives had done prior to me, that it was solvable. I believed that the information was contained in those case files. It was just going to have to be found.
We drove to the morgue, and this really changed my life. Seeing my mom and dad go in there, and then, you know, I heard my mom scream. It was nothing like I'd ever heard. But when a mom sees the body of her young daughter who had been kidnapped, brutally beaten, raped, her face had bruises all over it, dry blood in her teeth and some of her hair. 30 seconds after that, they were walking out of the door. My dad had his arm wrapped around her, was holding her up. She just cried silently. And it was silent all the way home.
I don't remember crying. I think I was just going through motions. I was just in shock. But it's just like, how could that happen? And that could happen to anyone, anywhere, anytime. And I never felt or heard of anything like that happening. So it was a very scary. Like, that person's out there, he's going to do it to another one of my friends. That was probably the biggest thing, was the fear that took over. I met her in 3rd grade, and we had been friends ever since. She was just so full of energy and just smiled and got along with everybody. The day of the dance, Carla called me and said, "Hey, I've got to go to Cloth World, and I'm going to bring my dress and find some ribbon to match for the bows of my hair. Do you want to come?" I said, "Yeah." Carla had just gotten a promise ring from Rodney. But I remember the plans being that when she graduated, they were going to go to Texas Tech, and then after they graduated, they were going to get married. I treasure that I got to talk to her before she went to the dance. There was no thinking in my mind that I was never going to talk to her again or see her again. And the funeral was at her church. Everything was such a blur, and I think it probably had to do with being in shock. I didn't want to accept it, but they had an open casket. As I got up to the casket, and I remember I just felt, my body just I don't know, didn't have any strength anymore. And I passed out in front of the casket when we walked by. The lady that had been sitting next to me was behind me, and she caught me. The funeral made it more real that they really did find her body. She's gone. She's not coming back. After the funeral, I was exhausted, and so I got on the couch and laid down. And then the family phone rang in the kitchen. I picked up the phone, and they just started breathing real heavy on the phone. They would ask, what size bra do you wear? Have you had sex? What kind of underwear do you wear? And if you don't answer these questions, I'm gonna kill you and or your parents. And I just screamed and hung up the phone. And when my mom came in, I was a bawling basket case. I was very scared. Scared of, was I the next victim? I got phone calls where they would just call and breathe heavy in the phone, like I received the one right the day of the funeral. But then I would get pretty perverted phone calls. They did put a tracer, and I know you had to stay on the line a certain amount of time. It was very terrifying to get those calls because you had already experienced something you've never experienced before, and the fear was so real. And so to add horrible calls on top of that, even just the breathing heavy in the phone. Is this the killer? It's just filled a fear of nothing that I'd ever felt before or never will probably feel again. After this happened, nothing was ever the same again. Mr. and Miss Walker were never the same. And they kept Carla alive as much as they could, but they were never the same. Mr. Walker, graduation, he definitely was there taking pictures, making sure he was, congratulating us. When my first child was born, he came up to the hospital, but he came up there and took pictures. Well, it just meant a lot because I wanted Carla there for those things, and she couldn't be. But I also knew how he was crushed, that he missed out with that with Carla, but he was happy to be there with us. So I knew the pain that he was feeling. But it was joy too.
Glenn McCurley was a truck driver at the time of Carla's abduction and killing. He owned the exact same make and model of gun as the magazine that was found at the crime scene where Carla had been abducted. They interviewed him extensively. He was insistent that he did not have this gun, and he said that it had been stolen just a few weeks prior. They asked him why he didn't file a police report. He said that he had been convicted of a stolen vehicle in 1961, and he wasn't supposed to have a weapon, so he did not want to file a report about the gun being stolen. They did conduct a polygraph with Glenn McCurley, and he passed it. And so he was excluded for passing the polygraph. There were a number of suspects that came and went over the next couple of years. There had been rumors of ex-boyfriends that were in conflict with Rodney. There were some drug dealers that people had accused of abducting Carla. So there were a number of rumors out there that really had to be put to bed and ruled out. And then the case really went cold after that. In 2019, you're hoping that new technology might help you solve the case. We still had Carla's clothing, and we had Rodney's clothing. So we had a number of items that were available for us to send off for testing. They were able to get a full DNA CODIS quality profile off of the bra, and that profile was uploaded into CODIS. We were hoping that after all this time, this person that did this to Carla would have committed other acts and his DNA would have been in the system. And unfortunately, we didn't get any hits. It wasn't usable unless we had a specific DNA individual to match it up to. We learned about a lab in Houston and told them what we had, and they said, if it's good quality DNA, it's not degraded, we believe that we can work with that. But if they consume that DNA, that means it is used up and there is no more remaining to be able to be used. That was the last amount of DNA that we had. And so if this is consumed, we're back to square one.
In 1974, I was blessed. I had a good family. Not a perfect family, but a good family. Always knew my dad was my protector and provider, and I know in his heart he felt like he let his beautiful daughter down by not getting justice for her. He referred to Carla as his flower. And he used to tell Rodney, take care of my flower. By the time Mom died in 2015, I think she also too died of a broken heart. It was a very dark time. My mama died, my marriage was on the rocks, my dad had died, had a sister that could never get off my mind. It's easy to give up hope, but then you just realize you can't give up hope. That's why you got is hope. And, every day's a new day.
My automatic reaction was, there's no way. Just total disbelief. Couldn't believe that that would even be possible. Growing up, we lived just a couple of miles from the Walkers, but didn't know anything of their family. The love my father had for me was incredibly supportive, no matter what I did, mistakes and all. He was always there. He had a funny side, had a magnetism about him that people loved to be around. Yeah, people loved him. Everyone did. But he felt closed off. Seems like there was always something that he was incredibly troubled about. Just didn't know what it was, though. but now it seems so clear to me. Didn't want to accept it. I think that we all still had some hope that somebody's made a mistake. This can't be true because of who we knew of him.
Glenn McCurley was hiding in plain sight for so many years. He had been married for 50 plus years. He had had 2 children. He never really did anything that brought attention to himself or his family. He really just laid very low the entire time. This was the answer that detectives had been looking for the last 46 years. I knew who did this to Carla. And, so anyway.
We're re-interviewing everybody that was in the case, and we had seen at one point they talked to Mr. McCurley.
And I told him about the same story I told you.
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, you sure got the wrong fella, because I ain't never killed nobody.
He was tapping his fingers on the armrest of the chair and clenching his fists, and he was trying to figure out what did we have on him. Towards the end of it, when we did ask him again about getting a swab from him, he kind of felt obligated at that point to give it to us and not deny it. When we left his residence, I knew we would be making an arrest soon.
I've never seen her before. I don't know who she is. When was I supposed to have done this? I've never seen her, never met her, never talked to her. I wouldn't know her if she was standing beside of me.
Your DNA was on her body, which means you had to be there and you had to participate in this. There's no question about that. It is evidence that does not lie. What we're saying, Mr. McCurley, is that your DNA was found in Carla Walker. Okay? So there's no question about it.
I did do it, I guess.
Can you tell us what happened?
How did you kill her?
I just choked her.
You've been holding on to that for a long time. It's about time you let that loose.
What a huge weight.
I'd been out drinking quite a bit, and then I turned bad. It's just, I didn't mean to. I choked her to death, I guess.
So you choked her in the car, and is that where you raped her as well, in the car? And then you dropped her off at the other place?
No, I can't remember all that.
He admits to choking her and killing her, but he has a really hard time admitting to raping Carla. The one thing that he also continued to deny during the entire interview was the fact that he had this gun. And basically at the 11th hour of this interview, I just confronted him about the gun and said, "Do you still have it?"
And we're not asking you something we don't already know. We wouldn't come to you with it if we didn't already know.
You still have it? Where do you have it in your house?
Up in Susan.
And so we immediately drafted a search warrant, took our crime scene unit out to the house and recovered the gun from exactly where he told us it would be. I mean, it's like that final piece of the puzzle that it all comes together, and he tells us the whole story.
Glenn McCurley, the gentleman who kidnapped, raped, and murdered my sister, since 1974 has lived less than a mile from the house that we live in. He drove right by the house where Carla lived, taking sons to school, picking them up. He knew where we lived, I have no doubt. That really made me angry. But I know this might be hard to believe, but it's true. I feel compassion and forgiveness. I do. And by me having compassion and forgiveness in my heart, evil has no control over my spirit or my day-to-day thoughts in life. I hope that Carla was happy. And she knew we didn't give up.
It was a very strange, sick feeling. That it was someone that lived so close that made it, I'm sorry, even worse. That he was still here in this area. And my body, just the goosebumps, just came all over my body. And tears. That's when I realized, well, he's been caught. There was a peace that I haven't had since it's happened. There was a time period that I had dreams about Carla. I had dreamed when we graduated. She was there, but I never saw her face. I just saw her long blonde hair. I dreamed that when we went to college, she was there. Any major step in life, I dreamed about her. I felt like she was living with us, but I never saw her face. And the last dream I have of her that I can vividly remember, she was on a train and she turned to look at me and I saw her face, which none of my dreams had ever had her face before. And we blew each other a kiss and she waved goodbye. And I waved goodbye to her, and I've never dreamed about her since. I feel like she's that happy wherever she is, she's that happy. And she's okay.
At one point during the interview, I asked McCurley, why did you select the spot you did to place Carla's body? And he said, well, go down this road and then there's this building and there's these bushes next to the building and I put it right there. And I said, no, Mr. McCurley, that's not where Carla was placed. Are you sure you're not getting this confused with somebody else you've done this to? And he pauses and he says, I don't think so. That's a bone-chilling moment. I don't believe that Carla was his first victim because that's not somebody's first offense. You don't start out, you escalate to this type of offense. So we're very confident that he's done this before. After looking at other cases that we have, unsolved homicides, I feel really confident that there's 3 or 4 cases that I believe Glenn McCurley could be responsible for. And I'm hoping one day we'll be able to resolve those cases. What I want the world to know about this case is that more and more cold cases are going to get solved. And if you've committed a murder and you haven't been caught, I would be worried if I was you.
It was a shock. Yeah, to say that it took the wind out of my sails is an understatement. Yeah. It crushed me. Yeah, it was tough. I love him. I love him. If there were other crimes, I wanted him to give those families some peace and confess to those things. I want him to give those families some closure. I thought if there was anybody that could open his eyes and soften his heart, it would be me, because I know he loves me. When I looked into my dad's eyes, I saw nothing. That was hard. It's hard to see that from someone who I loved so much. Didn't get to talk to him about anything because he shut down. He was completely closed off. I felt deflated when I left. It's the most empty I've ever felt in my entire life. It would have been easier if he had died of something than to lose him in this way. 'Cause I can't stop loving somebody. And just, it haunts me, the thought that my father, which I love so much, could spend an eternity in hell. But if he loves me at all, if he has any love for me at all, he would take that overwhelming weight off of me. That's what I want. I want that peace.
His world had been completely devastated. And I said, "Righty," I said, I'm Jim Walker, how are you? And he just couldn't even talk. I said, "Can I give you a hug, buddy?" And we hugged. Yeah. I said, "Hey, you're not responsible for the sins of your father. You do not own this. This is not your responsibility."
Yeah, meeting Jim was a pretty special moment in my life. He was comforting me. And I think that surprised me, when he could have done the exact opposite. But here he is, someone that was victimized by my father. He was comforting me.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the blessing of our friendship. I realized Roddy was a victim. He was a victim as well. His dad had victimized his whole family. In your son's name we pray, amen.
Amen.
I have been blessed to become a friend of Roddy McCurley, and we've formed a good friendship.
He saw someone in a dark, desperate place and said, I'm going to give that person love. I don't know what I would do without the relationship that I have with Jim. You never know why God puts people in each other's paths. I wish it was for another reason, but I'm happy that we did.
Great visiting with you again, okay?
Love you, brother.
Love you too, man.
It began with the sound of rain. Cold, steady, endless falling against the rusted fire escapes of a narrow street in Queens, washing the blood from the pavement where no one should have died that night. The city didn't stop for tragedy. It never does. But that corner under the flickering streetlight beside a shuttered deli became frozen in time. A woman's life ended there, and her name would soon vanish beneath the noise of a city that forgets too fast. Until 24 years later, when one fingerprint, one microscopic scar in the dust of an old file brought everything roaring back. Her name was Emily Hart, 27 years old, a nurse who walked home alone from a late shift on the night of November 3rd, 2001. Her route never changed 2 blocks down Crescent Avenue, across the underpass, left at the corner where the streetlight always blinked red twice before turning green. She never made it past the second block. Her body was found hours later by a sanitation worker at dawn, her purse gone, her phone shattered, her watch stopped at 1:43 a.m. The coroner would say strangulation. The police would call it a robbery gone wrong, but her mother never believed that. The detectives who caught the case were tired men working in the shadow of the chaos that still gripped New York in late 2001. The city had been ripped apart by fear and loss. A single woman's death didn't make headlines then. It was just another file, another photo in a drawer marked unsolved. No leads, no witnesses, no fingerprints, at least none that matched anyone in the system. The killer had been careful, too careful. The streets moved on, swallowing the story whole. But for Emily's family, time froze. Her mother kept the room exactly as it was, the books on the nightstand, the scent of her daughter's perfume sealed inside the fabric of an untouched sweater. Every year on November 3rd, she'd sit by the window with the same candle burning until dawn, waiting for something, for someone, for an answer that never came. Then, 24 years later, a new detective reopened the case. Her name was Detective Lena Moretti, a cold case specialist with the NYPD who had built her career on the ghosts of forgotten victims. She had seen too many faces fade from memory, too many mothers left staring into silence. The Hart case wasn't even on her original list. It was an old box, stacked beneath 3 others, marked only by a smudge of red ink and the number 01. 3,472. But when she opened it, the smell of dust mixed with something else, something heavier, like time itself, had been holding its breath. Inside were photographs, faded to sepia. Polaroids of the scene, the corner of Crescent Avenue. A woman's body half covered by a sheet. A smear on the curb that could have been blood or rust. The crime scene notes were sparse. The lead investigator's handwriting sharp and rushed. No suspects, no viable prints. Possible robbery. No DNA results. The pages ended abruptly, the ink dragging off mid-sentence, as if someone had stopped caring halfway through a thought. But Lena didn't stop there. She noticed something small, an evidence bag tucked between the folds of an old report. Inside it, a single silver button, worn smooth around the edges. The tag said it was found near the victim's hand, not from her clothing. The detail was marked as non-relevant, but Lena had learned long ago nothing is ever non-relevant in a murder that makes no sense. She sent the button for reanalysis to the new forensic lab upstate. The turnaround time was weeks, maybe months, but technology had changed. What couldn't be read in 2001 could now be decoded to the cellular level. Meanwhile, she went back to the scene. Crescent Avenue had changed, but not much. The deli was now a pawn shop. The lamppost still leaned at the same angle. The underpass smelled of damp concrete and old secrets. She stood where Emily fell, watching the traffic roll past, and tried to imagine the moment it happened. The silence between two breaths, the shadow that moved too quickly to be seen. Neighbors had long forgotten, or pretended to. The old man across the street said he remembered the police tape. The woman in the upstairs apartment said she'd heard a scream, like someone calling for help, but far away. Everyone remembered something different. Everyone forgot the same thing. 2 weeks later, the lab called back. The button had traces of skin cells, microscopic, degraded, almost useless. But almost isn't the same as nothing. The DNA was partial incomplete, but it produced a hit. Not a name, but a pattern. A familial connection to a man arrested in 2019 for assault in Connecticut. The system flagged it possible, relative first degree. The name that came up was Raymond Lasker, a quiet janitor at a middle school in New Haven. No criminal record, no reason to stand out. He'd lived a clean life, married once, divorced, no children. But his older brother, Frank Lasker, had disappeared in late 2001, right around the time Emily Hart was killed. Detective Moretti drove to New Haven the next morning. The rain was falling again, the same cold rhythm as the night Emily died. Raymond opened the door before she knocked twice. Thin man, gray hair, eyes like old glass. She told him she was investigating a homicide. He didn't flinch, just stared at her badge like it was a ghost. When she mentioned his brother's name, he looked down at his hands. "Frank's dead," he said quietly. "Been dead a long time." But when she asked how he knew, he couldn't answer. No body had ever been found. The next part came like a slow crack in the silence. Raymond said Frank used to live in Queens back then. Worked odd jobs, drank too much, got into trouble. He wasn't a bad man, he said. Just lost. Then he paused. He used to have this jacket, black leather, missing a button. The room felt colder. Lena didn't show it, but her heart raced. The silver button. She asked if Frank ever mentioned a woman named Emily. He said no. But he remembered one night Frank came home late, blood on his sleeve, saying he'd been jumped. A week later, he vanished. His car abandoned near the East River. It wasn't proof, but it was enough to dig deeper. She got a warrant to test the DNA from an old coffee mug found in a storage unit registered under Frank's name. The results took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of sleepless nights of staring at the photo of Emily Hart on her desk. Her eyes looked alive, even in death, like she was asking for something that words couldn't give. When the call finally came, Lena was in her car outside the precinct. The voice on the line said, "We got a match." The degraded DNA from the button, partial as it was, matched the sample from Frank Lasker's mug with a probability of 1 in 7.8 trillion. It was him. But there was more. Inside that storage unit, behind a pile of broken furniture, detectives found a box. Inside it, an old watch, cracked glass, stopped at 1:43 a.m. Emily's watch. The cold case wasn't cold anymore, it was burning. But there was a problem. Frank Lasker had been declared dead 15 years ago. His remains were supposedly found near the Hudson, though never identified. No one had ever questioned the file. Until now. Lena requested the old autopsy records. The report was thin, just like Emily's, but there was one thing missing: no fingerprint records, no DNA confirmation. Just a wallet with an ID, a wallet that could have been anyone's. If Frank Lasker wasn't dead, then where was he? The answer came from a place no one expected. An anonymous letter arrived at the precinct 3 days later. No return address. Just a single line written in trembling ink. "You're looking in the wrong grave." The letter was signed with one word, FL. Lena froze. The ghost was writing back. And suddenly, the rain in New York felt heavier again, like the city itself remembered what it had tried to forget. The envelope had no postmark, no fingerprints, just that trembling signature, FL, as if the hand that wrote it was shaking or fading. Detective Moretti stared at it for a long time under the harsh fluorescent light of her desk. Every detective has that moment, the thin edge where logic meets superstition. Was it a hoax? Someone playing games with the dead? Or had a ghost just written her a letter? She brought the paper to her nose, the faint smell of soil, something damp like old wood or rain-soaked leaves. It wasn't printed, it was written in ink blue uneven. Someone who hadn't written in a long time. The handwriting analysis would take days. She didn't wait. FL meant one thing, Frank Lasker. Declared dead in 2008, his body buried under a stone that nobody ever visited. But if he was truly dead, who was writing letters now? The next morning, she drove to St. Augustine Cemetery, where Frank's grave had been resting for 17 years. The grass was overgrown, the stone tilted slightly carved with the dates 1971, 2008. No family name below, no flowers, just silence. She stood there, her boots sinking into the wet ground, and thought about the note. You're looking in the wrong grave. She ordered an exhumation. The coroner wasn't pleased. You really think you're going to dig up an empty coffin after 2 decades? He asked, half amused. She didn't answer. She just watched as the rain started again, turning the soil into thick mud. It took 4 hours to reach the casket. When the lid creaked open, the first thing she saw wasn't bones. It was nothing. Empty space, no remains, just a tattered jacket folded neatly inside black leather missing a button. The air changed. Even the coroner stopped talking. Lena felt a chill that crawled up her spine. She looked at the tag stitched inside the collar, Frank Lasker. His name was there, written in fading black thread, but there was no body. Frank hadn't been buried. He had buried himself. Back at the precinct, the silence turned into static. The lieutenant wanted answers. The media couldn't know, not yet. The idea that a supposed corpse might still be alive after 20 years wasn't something they could control. But the truth had already begun to slip through the cracks. Someone from forensics leaked the exhumation order to a crime blogger. Within hours, the internet was on fire. Dead man writes from the grave, NYPD reopens 2001 cold case. Lena didn't care about the noise. She was staring at a wall of photos. Emily Hart's smile, Frank Lasker's mugshot from 1999, the silver button, the grave. Each one connected by red string, each string leading nowhere. She leaned back, eyes half closed, and whispered, "Where are you, Frank?" That night, she couldn't sleep. She replayed the letter in her mind over and over. You're looking in the wrong grave. It wasn't just a taunt, it was a direction. A message meant to lead her somewhere. She went back to the file, searching for anything connected to Frank's burial. One small note caught her eye, handwritten on the edge of a coroner's report, transfer from Hudson County, NJ. Hudson County, across the river, the jurisdiction line that could hide anything. She was on the road before dawn. The highway was empty, the fog thick as breath. The address led her to a small funeral home, long abandoned. The windows boarded up, the paint peeling. She forced the lock. Inside, the air was heavy with dust and the faint smell of formaldehyde. In the back room, she found boxes, old records, client files, death certificates stacked like forgotten confessions. One folder had her name written on it in pencil, Detective Moretti. Her chest tightened. She hadn't been here before, but someone knew she would come. Inside was another letter, the same trembling handwriting. You're close. Stop digging the dead. Find the living. Signed again, FL. Her pulse spiked. She called for backup, but before anyone could arrive, she heard a sound, a soft creak, like someone moving above. The building had a second floor. She drew her weapon and took the stairs, every step echoing like a countdown. The upper floor was dark windows, nailed shut. A single lamp flickered at the end of the hall. Beneath it, a table. And on the table, a box. Not big, not heavy, but lined with dust. Her hand trembled as she lifted the lid. Inside, photographs. Emily Hart. Dozens of them. Taken from a distance. On her way to work, crossing the street, standing at the bus stop. The dates in the corner read October 2001. The last one, her lying on the pavement under that blinking red light. Lena's breath caught. Someone had stalked Emily for weeks before she died, and whoever left this here knew she'd find it. Then behind her a voice, hoarse, low. "Don't scream, detective." She turned slowly. A man stood in the doorway, thin, gray-haired, his face half hidden in shadow. For a second, her mind refused to connect the dots. But when he stepped closer, the scar across his cheek caught the light just like the one in Frank Lasker's mugshot. He was older, but it was him, alive. "Frank Lasker," she said quietly. He nodded once. "You shouldn't have dug her up." "Emily Hart." "No," he said. "The past?" She kept her gun steady. "You killed her?" "I didn't," he said. "But I saw who did." The silence cracked open. He told her everything. How he'd worked construction near Crescent Avenue, how he'd been drinking that night, how he saw a man pull Emily into the alley. "He looked like me," Frank said. "Same build, same jacket. That's why they thought it was me." "Who was he?" she pressed. Frank looked down. "My brother, Raymond." The quiet janitor. The man who had opened his door without fear, who had spoken softly about blood on a sleeve. "He killed her," Frank whispered. "Said it was an accident. Said she fought him, scratched him. He begged me to help hide it. I panicked. I ran. I thought I could start over." Lena's grip tightened on the gun. "So you faked your death?" He nodded. "I left my jacket, my wallet, everything. Made it look like I drowned. He buried that coffin so I could disappear. I thought it was over. And the letter. I couldn't sleep," he said. "Every night I saw her face. When I heard they reopened the case, I knew he'd panic. He's not the same anymore. He'll do it again if you don't stop him." Thunder rolled outside. Rain hammered the roof. "Where is he now?" Frank's eyes flickered toward the window, watching me. The glass shattered. A gunshot tore through the wall. Frank fell a red bloom spreading across his shirt. Lena dove for cover, returning fire through the dark. Footsteps thundered down the stairs, heavy, fast, retreating. She crawled toward Frank, pressed her hand to the wound. "Stay with me, Frank." He coughed, blood bubbling on his lips. He kept something, a box, in the school. "What school?" "New Haven, basement." Then his eyes went still. The silence after was deafening. The rain outside swallowed the sound of sirens approaching. When backup arrived, the shooter was gone. Only one shell casing remained near the broken window, a clean point, .38, polished untouched by time. 2 fingerprints, both matched Raymond Lasker. By dawn, an APB went out across 3 states, armed and dangerous. But Raymond was already gone. His house emptied overnight. His car abandoned by the highway engine still warm. In the passenger seat, a single photo, Emily Hart smiling, her eyes crossed out with ink. Detective Moretti knew this wasn't the end, it was just the beginning. She didn't sleep that night, or the one after. The image of Frank bleeding out haunted her every time she closed her eyes, but the words that stuck hardest weren't his last ones. They were the first. He'll do it again. Somewhere out there, the man who'd hidden behind silence for 2 decades was moving again, a ghost among the living. And in the basement of a quiet New Haven school, a locked room waited to tell its story. The morning came gray and heavy clouds hanging low over the Hudson like a bruise that wouldn't fade. Detective Lena Moretti hadn't slept in 31 hours. The radio kept looping the same alert suspect, armed, possibly heading northbound approach, with caution. She didn't need to hear his name again. Raymond Lasker. The brother who buried one life to protect another. The man who had smiled through every interview, who had let her walk into his house without fear. Now she was driving toward New Haven, toward the one place Frank's last breath had pointed her to, the school basement. The road stretched endless, soaked in rain, the windshield wipers beating like a heart, refusing to stop. Every few miles she caught her reflection in the mirror. Pale skin, red eyes, jaw locked tight, not tired, possessed. By the time she reached St. Martin's Middle School, the city had barely woken. The parking lot was empty, except for a single maintenance van. The building loomed gray against the dawn, its windows blacked by decades of grime. The sign by the gate read, "Founded 1954. Knowledge lights the way." But knowledge had a way of hiding in the dark. She flashed her badge to the security guard. "Detective Moretti, NYPD. I need access to the basement." The guard frowned. "Basement's been sealed for years. Flood damage. Unseal it." He hesitated, then handed her the keys. "You're not going to like what you find down there." The stairwell smelled of mildew and iron. Water dripped from the ceiling in slow, rhythmic taps. Her flashlight beam cut through the dark dust swirling in its wake. The steps creaked beneath her weight, echoing in the still air. At the bottom, a rusted door waited. Someone had painted over the lock with gray paint, but it had been scratched recently claw marks in the metal. She forced it open. The hinges screamed. Inside, rows of old furniture, broken desks, forgotten projectors. The smell was wrong. Not just dust, something else. Metallic, stale, blood. Her beam landed on a table against the far wall. On it, a wooden box, small square, carved with initials burned into the lid, E.H. Her heart stuttered. Emily Hart. She snapped on gloves, lifted the lid. Inside, photographs again. But these weren't of Emily. They were of other women. 6 of them. Different faces, different ages, all taken in the same voyeuristic style. Walking alone. Waiting at bus stops. One of them, still unsolved missing persons from Connecticut in 2015. And at the bottom, a cassette tape. Label worn, barely legible. She held it up to the light, written in faded ink, Confession 1. Her pulse climbed. She found an old tape player on the shelf, wiped the dust, and hit play. Static, then breathing. Slow, deliberate. A man's voice low and steady. You think I forgot. You think time changes what I did. But every face stays, every breath. I never meant to hurt her. I only wanted her to stop screaming. The sound of metal scraping, then silence. Lena froze. The voice wasn't Frank's. It was calmer, controlled, and unmistakably Raymond's. They said Frank died, but he didn't. I let him vanish. He carried the sin for me. That was the deal. He hides, I stay clean. But he wrote that letter. He couldn't stay quiet. He never could. A click. The tape stopped. Her throat tightened. She ejected the cassette, slid it into an evidence bag. She radioed dispatch. Detective Moretti to HQ. I found evidence of multiple homicides, possible link to cold cases across New York and Connecticut. Suspect likely on the move. Send local units to lock down the area. But before dispatch could reply, she heard it footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from behind the rows of furniture. She drew her weapon. NYPD, show yourself. Silence. Then, from the dark, a whisper. You shouldn't have come here alone. The voice was calm, almost gentle. The same tone that had greeted her at the door in New Haven days earlier. Raymond. He stepped into the dim light, his hand's empty face shadowed beneath the flickering bulb. His eyes were hollow calm, in a way that made the air turn cold. Where's Frank? She demanded, though she already knew. He smiled faintly. You buried him twice, detective. Isn't that enough? Her finger hovered near the trigger. Hands where I can see them. You don't understand, he said softly. I didn't kill those women. Not all of them. Then who did? He tilted his head. She did. For a second she thought she misheard. Emily. His voice cracked for the first time. You think she was a victim. She wasn't. She found me that night. She followed me. She knew what Frank had done. She tried to stop us both. Lena shook her head. Emily Hart was strangled Raymond. Her fingerprints were on her own throat. He smiled, slow and broken, because she fought back. He took a step closer. You want the truth. You're standing in it. He reached into his coat. She fired a warning shot. The bullet hit a metal locker, ricocheted, sparks flying. He didn't flinch. Instead, he pulled out not a gun, but another cassette. Held it up like an offering. Confession 2, he whispered. Play it and you'll understand. Put it down. He set it gently on the floor, hands raised. I never wanted to kill her. I wanted to keep her quiet. Frank said we could make it look like something else, but she didn't stop fighting. She bit me. She screamed. So I kept squeezing. I didn't stop until she did. The words hit like a hammer. You killed her. He nodded, calm again. Yes, and then I buried myself too. Sirens echoed in the distance, faint but growing. He heard them too. You called them? He said, smiling. Good. Let them find this place. Let them dig again. The truth isn't buried deep. It's right under your feet. Before she could move, he stepped back and kicked over a barrel. The smell hit instantly. Gasoline. Then the click of a lighter. The room erupted in flame. Lena dove for cover, the fire roaring up the walls. Raymond vanished into the smoke, his shape dissolving in the haze. She grabbed the cassette, stuffed it in her jacket, and crawled toward the exit. The door frame was already collapsing. She slammed her shoulder into it twice until the hinges gave way. She stumbled out into the rain as the fire swallowed the basement behind her. Fire engines wailed down the street, red lights slicing through the dawn. She turned back just once and saw him, standing by the fence, watching the flames, then gone. By noon, the basement was ash. The tape's photos all destroyed except the one she'd saved. The only proof that Raymond Lasker wasn't just a killer, but a man chasing his own guilt through time. At headquarters, the lab technicians digitized the second cassette. It began with static again. Then, Raymond's voice, weaker this time, almost detached. They'll find the box. They'll know. But they won't stop it, because it never stops. You can kill a man, but not what he believes, and she believed I could be saved. Then another voice, fainter, a woman's. Raymond, please. It was Emily's voice, recorded seconds before her death. Lena felt her chest tighten, the room shrinking around her. The tape cut off with a sudden sharp gasp, then silence. That sound would haunt her for the rest of her life. Outside, the news had already broken. The New York 2001 cold case solved after 24 years, suspect still at large. Reporters called it closure. But Lena knew better. Because somewhere out there in the gray between guilt and survival, Raymond Lasker was still breathing, watching, waiting. And she had the feeling, deep, cold, certain, that he'd already chosen his next target. The news spread like wildfire. The 2001 Queens murder finally solved. Brother confesses from beyond the grave. Suspect at large, after-school basement inferno. But what the headlines didn't say, what only Detective Lena Moretti knew, was that the story wasn't over. The man behind those flames hadn't run from justice. He was setting the stage for something else, something colder, smarter, quieter. 3 days after the fire, Lena sat in her apartment, lights off, blinds drawn. Her desk was covered with photos, Emily Hart's autopsy shot, Raymond Lasker's driver's license, the silver button. The note signed FL, each one, like a ghost staring back. Outside, the hum of the city was distant, unreal. Her phone buzzed once, unknown number, a photo message. It was her car, parked outside the precinct, taken from the roof across the street. Underneath a text, "You dig graves for others, but one's waiting for you." She froze. The number couldn't be traced. The image metadata was scrubbed. Whoever sent it knew what they were doing, and only one man alive had a reason to send it. She didn't tell her captain, didn't file it as evidence. She knew what protocol demanded, turn it in request protection, wait. But waiting meant giving Raymond control. He'd already taken that once, not again. Instead, she went back through the ashes. The fire department had cleared the scene 2 days ago, declaring it total structural loss. But Lena knew there were always survivors, not people, but objects, fragments that refused to burn. The site was cordoned off with yellow tape, the air still sharp with smoke. She moved through the debris, carefully, boots crunching on charred glass. Then, half buried under a collapsed beam, something metallic caught the light. She knelt, a key ring, half melted. Attached to it, a single brass tag engraved with numbers 1213. Not an address, not a date, a code. The tag was attached to a locker key, the kind used in bus terminals or storage facilities. She made calls all afternoon, cross-referencing every facility within a 50-mile radius. Only one had a matching format Liberty Storage near the edge of Manhattan, Unit 1213, registered under the name F. Lasker. By dusk, she was standing at the facility gate. The attendant scanned her badge, shrugged. That unit's been rented 20 years, never opened. Paid in cash, always on time. Who's been paying it? He frowned. Guy in a gray coat, comes once a year, no name. She felt the back of her neck prickle. When was the last payment? 2 weeks ago. Inside, the rows of storage lockers stretched endless metallic humming faintly in the cold. Her footsteps echoed between the walls, the number painted in black 1213. The key slid in smooth, like it had been waiting. The door rolled up with a hollow clatter. Inside, the air was stale, untouched. Cardboard boxes stacked in perfect symmetry, and on the back wall a mirror, floor to ceiling. For a second, she saw herself reflected, tired, haunted gun drawn. Then her eyes caught the writing across the glass, scrawled in red ink like blood. You found the wrong brother. Her pulse quickened. She scanned the room, weapon raised. Nothing moved. She stepped closer. Beneath the words taped to the mirror were photographs not of Emily this time, but of Lena herself, walking out of the precinct, sitting in her car, entering her apartment. The earliest dated from 3 weeks ago, the latest last night. He'd been watching her, studying her, waiting for her to open the right door. Behind the mirror, a faint humming sound. She touched the glass. It vibrated slightly. She pried the corner, revealing a hidden cavity. Inside, a small digital recorder blinked red. Recording. She pressed stop. The tape clicked and Raymond's voice filled the room. "Hello, detective. I knew you'd come. You always do. You and I, we're the same. You dig through the past because you're afraid of your own. But here's the truth. The dead don't need justice. They need company." A pause. "You asked where I am. Look behind you." Her body reacted before her brain. She spun, weapon raised, but the hallway was empty. Just a motion sensor camera above the door, blinking red, recording her reaction. "Smile," his voice said. "The world's watching." Her stomach turned cold. She shot the camera. The light died. The silence that followed felt alive. She called for backup. By the time officers arrived, the recorder was gone. The mirror smashed. Every trace of his voice erased. Whoever Raymond was, now he wasn't hiding out of fear. He was staging something, drawing her in like a moth to the same flame that killed his brother. The next day, another letter arrived at the precinct. Typed this time, no signature. "You took one ghost from me. I'll take one from you." It came with a photo. A woman, middle-aged, brown hair, kind eyes, standing outside a small bakery in Brooklyn. Lena's breath caught. Her mother. She ran. Sirens screamed behind her as she sped through the city, red lights blurring. She reached the bakery in 12 minutes. The door was locked, lights out. She kicked it open. The smell hit first. Not blood chloroform, a sweet chemical fog. The chairs were overturned, the register drawer empty, and in the center of the floor, taped neatly to a stool, a single envelope. Inside, a photograph, her mother tied to a chair, terrified. Behind her, a wall with peeling blue paint, and on that wall, spray-painted in dripping red letters, Crescent Avenue never forgets. He had taken her back to where it all began, the street where Emily Hart died. That night, Crescent Avenue was crawling with patrol cars, search dogs, and lights that turned the wet pavement white. But the old buildings were mostly empty now, condemned crumbling. Lena stood in the center of the street, staring at the flickering lamp, the same one from the crime scene photos. It still blinked twice red before turning green. Crescent Avenue never forgets. He wanted her here. He wanted her to remember. A nearby officer shouted, "Detective, we found something." In the alley behind the pawn shop, a chair, ropes cut clean, and beside it, a recorder. She pressed play. "You made me dig her up, detective. Now I'll bury you the same way." Static. Then another voice, faint, trembling. "Lena, he's..." Then a scream, cut short. Her mother's voice. The alley spun around her, sound dissolving into a roar. She dropped to her knees, hands shaking, the recorder slipping from her grip. For the first time in years, she couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The search continued through the night. They found nothing. No trace of her mother, no vehicle, no prints. Just that voice echoing through her skull. By dawn, she knew what he'd done. He hadn't kidnapped her mother to kill her. Not yet. He'd taken her to make her relive the past, to drag her into his labyrinth of guilt and revenge. Because Raymond Lasker wasn't finished, he wanted to finish the story the city forgot. And Lena Moretti wasn't chasing a cold case anymore. She was living one. The city didn't sleep that night. Neither did she. The rain had stopped, but the streets still glistened, as if the storm hadn't left it, had only gone underground. Crescent Avenue felt alive again, breathing in the dark, holding its secrets like it always had. The yellow tape flickered under the streetlight, the same one that blinked twice red before turning green. It had witnessed everything: Emily's last breath, Frank's disappearance, and now the detective chasing ghosts that refused to die. Detective Lena Moretti stood alone at the edge of the alley, her hands still trembling from the sound of her mother's voice. That scream wasn't an echo. It was real, fresh, immediate. He wanted her to hear it, to make her run. And she would, because she knew this wasn't a game about killing anymore. It was about memory. The squad cars cleared out by dawn. She stayed. watching the light change from gray to gold, watching the city wake up around a place that should have been forgotten. She traced the wall where the message had been sprayed, Crescent Avenue never forgets. Underneath the layers of graffiti, she noticed something else, barely visible, a faint outline of numbers. 110301. The night Emily Hart died. Raymond was dragging her back 24 years to the minute. At 1:43 a.m., her watch ticked the exact time Emily's had stopped, the exact time her mother screamed on the recording. He was recreating the night. The forensics team had found one clue from the alley, a tire tread, wide, clean, distinctive. They traced it to a delivery van registered under R. Lasker Janitorial Services, the same company where Raymond had worked, but the van hadn't been reported stolen. It was still active, GPS tracker disabled. Lena took the file and stared at the map. The van had last pinged 2 nights earlier near the Queensboro Industrial District, abandoned warehouses, private storage lots, perfect for hiding someone alive. She didn't wait for backup. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. She just drove. The sun hadn't fully risen. The world looked colorless. Her tires cut through puddles, and her mind played every second of the last tape on repeat. Her mother's trembling voice, the sound of the rope stretching that single scream. When she reached the industrial zone, it was silent except for the hum of a generator somewhere deep within the maze of buildings. She parked behind an old warehouse, drew her weapon, and entered through a side door half covered by ivy. The air inside was damp heavy. It smelled like mold rust and something else, old oil mixed with metal. Her flashlight beam cut through the dark illuminating rows of machinery covered in tarps. The sound of dripping water echoed. Then a flicker, a red light, motion sensor. She crouched, moved slow, each step deliberate. The sound of her heartbeat was louder than her boots. The red light blinked again, not from a security camera, but from a small speaker sitting on a crate. She approached. Pressed play. You never sleep. Do you, detective? You and I are made of the same insomnia. You chase the dead. I become them. Raymond's voice filled the space. Calm, rehearsed, intimate. You think this is about your mother? No. She's a mirror, just like Emily was. You'll see her soon. Static, then a faint cry, muffled, close. Her flashlight swung to the corner, a metal door, locked with a chain. She fired once. The padlock shattered. The room inside was small, bare concrete. A single chair bolted to the floor, ropes cut loose, and on the wall, dozens of photos taped in neat rows. Her mother's face, Emily's, Frank's, even her own, taken from years ago graduation, her academy badge, her first day as detective. He'd been watching her for years, long before the case reopened. In the center of the wall, a single word painted in black: inheritance. Her stomach turned cold. There was something else a recorder newer than the others. She hit play. Detective Moretti, you don't know who you are, but I do. Emily Hart wasn't just a victim. She was a witness, and you're the result of what she tried to stop. The words froze her. Your father's name wasn't Moretti, it was Frank Lasker. Her hand trembled so violently she almost dropped the device. No, she whispered. He hid you, changed your name, moved you before they could find out. He thought the past could die if you never looked back, but you looked, detective, you dug, and now it's awake again. The tape clicked off. She stumbled backwards, breath, short, head spinning. Frank Lasker, her father, the man she'd watched bleed out in front of her, the man she'd thought was just a fugitive, a liar. The floor beneath her shifted, not literally, but something inside her did. Every case she'd ever solved, every ghost she'd chased, every reason she'd joined homicide, it all rewound to one truth: she'd been solving her own bloodline. Her flashlight caught something glinting under the chair, a locket, small, tarnished. Inside, a photo of a woman holding a baby. The woman was Emily Hart, the baby unmistakably her. It didn't make sense. Emily was the victim. How could she? A sound broke through her thoughts, a slow clap from behind. Finally, a voice said, "You see the whole picture." She turned, gun raised. Raymond stood at the doorway, shadowed by the light from the hall, his coat dripping from the rain eyes, empty of everything human. "What did you do to her?" she demanded. He smiled. "Nothing. She did it to herself." Emily wanted to expose Frank, but then she found out about you, about what they'd done. He loved her, you know, but love's just another word for weakness. Where's my mother? She's not your mother, detective. He tilted his head. She raised you, yes, but she wasn't the one who gave you life. Emily was. Lena's throat locked. You're lying. Am I? He stepped closer. You have her eyes, her defiance. You even stand like her when you're angry. You don't remember because you were too young. Frank took you after she died, gave you a new name, buried the truth so deep he thought it would never surface. But truth always rots its way back up. The air between them buzzed like a live wire. She wanted to shoot him, wanted to end it. But something in his voice, something quiet, sounded too much like conviction. He reached into his pocket, slowly pulling out a folded paper, dropped it at her feet. Birth certificate, Queens General Hospital, November 3rd, 2001. Her hands shook as she opened it. Mother Emily Hart, Father Frank Lasker. The world tilted. Raymond's tone softened, almost mournful. I killed her, but you killed me when you came looking. He took a step back. Now you understand why the street never forgets. You are the memory detective. The sound of sirens grew distant, faint through the storm. He turned toward the door. Raymond, don't move. He smiled. You can't catch what you already are. He ran. She fired. Once, twice. The bullets tore through the metal sparks flying, but when she reached the doorway, he was gone, swallowed by the rain as if the city itself had claimed him. Backup arrived minutes later. They found nothing but the tape, the chair, the photographs. The brass tag 1213 was missing. Lena stood in the ruin of it all, the truth burning through her veins like acid. The man she'd been hunting wasn't just a killer. He was the echo of her own blood. And the woman she'd mourned since her first day on the job, the nurse, the innocent, was her mother. The case that defined her had never belonged to her department. It belonged to her DNA. Outside, the storm broke again, washing the streets of Crescent Avenue clean for the third time in 24 years. But nothing could wash her clean now. As the first light of morning hit the wet pavement, Lena looked down the alley one last time and saw something glimmer, a silver button half buried in the mud. The same one that started it all. She picked it up, closed her hand around it, and whispered, "This ends with me." Somewhere far away, a man watched her from the edge of the crowd, his eyes cold, distant, almost proud. Raymond Lasker was still out there, and for the first time she understood what he meant. The past doesn't stay buried. It inherits the living. The rain had stopped, but the storm hadn't. It lived now inside her. Every drop that hit the pavement outside the precinct windows felt like a clock ticking down to something inevitable. By the time Detective Lena Moretti walked back into headquarters, her clothes were soaked, her hands still gripping the silver button like a relic. The same object that had started everything. The same one that now pulsed in her palm like it had a heartbeat. She didn't speak to anyone, didn't sign the logbook, didn't look at the officers who turned to watch her pass. They all knew. News traveled faster than truth in this building. Detective linked to 24-year-old victim, possible daughter of killer and victim. Internal affairs investigating conflict of interest. The whispers moved through the corridors like smoke. In the lieutenant's office, the blinds were half closed, slicing the light into gray bars. He stood behind the desk, arms crossed, face carved in stone. "Lena," he said quietly, "sit down." She didn't. "I can explain," she began, but he cut her off. "Don't bother, IA's already on it." They found the certificate. Her throat tightened. "It's real?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Hospital records match. DNA will confirm by morning." Lena looked at the floor. "Emily Hart was my mother. And Frank Lasker, your father." He rubbed his temples. "You realize what that means? You're investigating your own parents' murder?" "They were never just my parents," she said. "They were a crime scene." The lieutenant exhaled slowly. "You're off the case, Lena. Effective immediately." Her body went cold. "You can't." "I have to. You've been compromised." "Compromised." She took a step forward. "That man killed my mother, framed my father, and he's still out there. He has my..." She stopped herself. Her voice cracked. "He has my mother's memory. I'm not walking away." The lieutenant's tone softened. "You're too close. You can't see straight anymore." She looked up, eyes sharp as glass. "Close is all I've got." He didn't argue, just watched her leave, knowing he couldn't stop her. By nightfall, she was in her car driving through the streets of Queens with no badge, no warrant, no backup, just the button and the recorder from the warehouse. The voice that haunted her now whispered between the static every time she replayed it, "You are the memory." She parked outside a small diner on Crescent Avenue, the only place still open past midnight. The same diner Emily used to stop at after her shifts, the same booth she'd once sat in captured in one of the stalker photos. The waitress recognized her. "Detective Moretti, right? You're the one on TV." Lena forced a smile. "Not tonight." The woman poured her coffee, lowered her voice. "A man was here earlier, asked for you by name." Her pulse quickened. What did he look like? Tall, gray coat, scar on his cheek. "Raymond. He left this." She handed over a folded napkin. On it, written in blue pen, "You're not chasing me anymore, you're chasing yourself." Lena's hands trembled. On the back of the napkin, a map. A single red X over a name she hadn't seen since childhood heart residence Long Island. Her grandparents' old house. She left cash on the counter coffee untouched and drove. The city gave way to suburbs to coastline. The moon hung low, half hidden by cloud. The air smelled like salt and decay. When she reached the house, the windows were dark, but the front door stood open. She drew her weapon. Raymond. No answer. Inside, the air was thick with dust and something sweeter, old perfume, faint like a memory. The furniture was covered in white sheets, ghostly silhouettes in the dark. Her flashlight swept across framed photos on the wall. Emily Hart, smiling Frank beside her, a baby in her arms. Her. She moved deeper inside. The floorboards groaned. A faint sound came from upstairs, a soft click like a door gently closing. She climbed every step, louder than her breathing. The hallway stretched long and narrow, lined with faded wallpaper. At the end, her old bedroom, the door half open. Although inside, a single candle flickered on the floor. Next to it, an envelope. Her name on it, Lena. She opened it with shaking hands. Inside, a photograph. Black and white. Her mother holding her in the hospital. Behind them, a man she didn't recognize until she looked closer. Raymond. He looked younger, almost kind, standing at the edge of the frame, smiling faintly at the newborn. Her blood ran cold. She turned the photo over. On the back, "Family never dies. It just forgets." Then the floor creaked behind her. She spun around. The candle flickered. The shadows stretched, and from the doorway came that calm, steady voice. "You finally made it home." He was there. Pale, hollow eyes shining in the candlelight. "Why here?" she demanded. "Because this is where she loved you," he said softly. "And where he took you from me." "What are you talking about?" "Emily wasn't just your mother," he said. "She was my sister." Lena froze. "No." "Yes. Frank and I, we weren't brothers by blood. He married her. I envied him. She pitied me. That night she told me she was leaving, taking you. Frank tried to stop her. He hit her. I tried to stop him. She fell. And when she stopped moving, his voice broke. I couldn't let him win. So I made it look like a stranger's crime. I buried him with her secret. But he took you before the police came." Lena's breath trembled. The room felt smaller with every word. "You killed her because you loved her," she said. He nodded slowly. "And you hunted me because you loved him." She raised her gun. "You took everything from me." He smiled sadly. "No, detective, I gave you purpose." The candle guttered. Darkness swallowed them both. Then a single flash, muzzle fire. A shot echoed through the house, then silence. When the light returned, Raymond was gone. Only the candle remained flame, trembling in the air. On the wall behind it, written in ash end where it began. She stumbled back, ears ringing, hands slick with sweat. She didn't know if she'd missed or if he was never really there. The air smelled of gunpowder and ghosts. Outside, sirens wailed again. Someone must have called in the shot. She walked out onto the porch, weapon still raised, the dawn just breaking over the Atlantic. The light hit the house in fractured gold, and for a brief second she saw them, Emily and Frank, standing together in the reflection of the window, smiling, holding the baby she used to be. Then they faded, leaving only her own reflection staring back. The case wasn't over. It had only folded in on itself, twisting until truth and blood became the same thing. She looked down at the silver button in her hand, the circle unbroken, the same one that had outlived every lie. Behind her in the house, something fell, a faint thud, a door swinging open. She turned gun ready, but saw only darkness. Then, from somewhere deep inside, a voice, soft, almost kind. "You can't kill the past, Lena. You can only become it." And then it was gone. The waves crashed against the rocks below the cliffs. The city still asleep, unaware that one detective had just crossed the line between solving a murder and becoming its last chapter. She holstered her gun, whispered to the dawn, "Then let's see how it ends," and walked back into the house. The sun rose red over the Atlantic, cutting through the mist that clung to the roof of the old Hart house. The light slid across the porch like a blade, sharp and cold, and for a moment the world seemed to hold its breath. Inside, Detective Lena Moretti stood motionless, the silver button still pressed into her palm. The air smelled of salt dust and something else like burned photographs. Her gun hung loose at her side. The echo of the gunshot still hummed in her ears, but there was no blood, no body, no sign of Raymond. Only the whisper he'd left behind, still floating through the empty rooms. "You can't kill the past, Lena. You can only become it." Outside, police cruisers lined the narrow road lights, flashing against the gray sea. The first officers who arrived hesitated at the door. No warrant, no report, no official reason to be here. Just a detective who'd gone too far again. The lieutenant himself showed up 30 minutes later, his face, tight jaw clenched against the wind. He found her standing in the kitchen, staring at a wall where sunlight had burned the faint outline of a cross. "Lena," he said softly, "what did you do?" She didn't turn around. He was here. "Who?" "Raymond Lasker." He exhaled hard. "We found your car 2 blocks away. IA's been calling all night. You shouldn't even be out here." "I'm not part of your department anymore," she said. "You made sure of that." He stepped closer. "Don't make this worse. Whatever this is, it's over." Lena turned, then eyes hollow. "It's not over. Not until I know why she died." "Emily Hart," she nodded. "She's my mother." And he said there's something at the hospital. A record that proves what they were trying to hide. "Lena." She looked at him, voice low but sharp. "Either you arrest me or you let me finish it." He hesitated, then handed her a folded sheet of paper. "You didn't get this from me." She opened it. It was a location Queens General Hospital Archives Division, Sublevel 2. A handwritten note beneath file destroyed in 2002 fire or so, they said. By noon, she was back in the city. The hospital towered against the skyline, a concrete monument to things people try to forget. She flashed her badge once out of habit, and no one stopped her. The archives were in the basement, where the light never reached. Rows of metal cabinets stretched like coffins in a morgue. Dust floated in the beam of her flashlight, thick as smoke. Somewhere in the dark, water dripped. The record room was locked, but the old key she'd taken from Frank's evidence box fit perfectly. The door opened with a hiss, and the smell of mold hit her like a memory. Inside, cardboard boxes stacked to the ceiling, most labeled by year. She found the section marked 2001. 2002. Pulled one down, coughing as the dust exploded into the air. Birth certificates, death records, incident logs. She flipped through them, fast hands shaking. Hart, Emily. The name appeared faint and smeared. Mother, Emily Hart. Father? The line was blacked out, not redacted, burned. She turned the page. There was another sheet, stapled beneath it, an original, unaltered copy. The name typed clearly. Father Frank Lasker. But there was a third paper behind it. She unfolded it slowly. Paternity retest ordered, results pending. Sample mismatch. Possible falsification of record. Her chest tightened. The words swam in front of her eyes. Sample mismatch. She wasn't Frank's daughter. The room tilted. The air felt thinner. Every lie, every death, every clue twisted together in her mind. Raymond's words echoed again. She was my sister. If Emily was his sister, and the test said Frank wasn't the father, then who was? Her flashlight flickered. She hit it twice. The beam steadied, landing on a row of patient records against the far wall. Her name caught her eye. Lena Hart, infant, transferred, protected status. The file was stamped with a date November 5th, 2001, 2 days after Emily's murder. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside, photos of the baby, her fingerprints, her hospital bracelet. And a report signed by Detective Raymond Lasker, NYPD Homicide Division? She froze. He wasn't just her mother's brother. He'd been the original investigator on the case. The man she'd hunted had once worn the same badge she did. The same badge that now felt like poison. The lights flickered again. Then a noise. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate echoing through the corridor outside. Lena. Her name rolled through the dark like smoke. She turned off the flashlight, heart pounding. "Come out," he said. "You found it. You know now." She slipped behind a row of cabinets, gun raised. The footsteps came closer. The beam of another flashlight swept the room. "You think you're any different from me?" Raymond's voice was calm. "You dig up bodies because you need to feel alive. You carry ghosts like trophies." She moved between shelves, silent. "You think you're justice," he continued, "but you're just blood pretending to be clean." The flashlight passed inches from her face. She could see the outline of his shoulder, his coat. His hand rested on something heavy. He stopped near the table. "Emily wanted to protect you. Frank wanted to keep you. I wanted to tell you. We all failed." Her finger brushed the trigger. "Do it," he said quietly. "Be what you were born to be." For a second, she almost did. Then another sound, not from him, behind her. A door slamming, boots pounding, flashlights cutting through the dark. Police drop it. Uniformed officers flooded the room. Raymond didn't move, just smiled faintly. Took them long enough. Lena lowered her gun, confused. How did they... He raised his hands. "I called them." The lieutenant stepped forward, weapon drawn. "Lasker hands where I can see them." "I've been waiting 24 years for this," Raymond said. "But not for you, for her." He turned to Lena, eyes steady. "You wanted the truth. It's all in there. Every lie, every name, every drop of blood. Take it, and remember what we are." Then, before anyone could stop him, he reached into his coat. "Don't," she shouted. But it wasn't a gun. It was a lighter. He flicked it. The flame caught the edge of the box, licking through the paper. The room erupted. Smoke filled the air. Officers dove for cover. Lena ran forward, grabbed him by the collar, slammed him against the cabinet. "Why?" she screamed. He smiled through the smoke. "Because the truth doesn't live on paper." Then the fire roared, swallowing the files. She dragged him toward the door, coughing eyes burning. He didn't fight, didn't run. He just whispered through the smoke, "You'll finish what I started." By the time they reached the stairwell, the ceiling collapsed. Fire crews pulled them both out. Raymond Lasker was alive, but barely. Third-degree burns across his arms. He never screamed. In the ambulance, he turned his head toward her voice, thin as ash. "You know now, don't you?" Lena stared at him. "You're not my father." He smiled weakly. "No, but I am what made you." Then he closed his eyes. The monitor beeped once, then flatlined. She sat there in the back of the ambulance, smoke in her lungs, the silver button clenched in her hand. Through the haze, she saw the hospital burning, every record, every secret turning to ash. And for the first time in 24 years, Crescent Avenue was truly silent. But she knew it wasn't the end. Because ghosts don't die in fire, they migrate. And somewhere in the ruins of the hospital, a single piece of paper had survived. One word written in the margin, half burned but legible: "daughter." She stared at it until the sirens drowned out the world. The red lights flashing against the black smoke like the pulse of something that refused to die. The case wasn't solved, it had just evolved. And Detective Lena Moretti wasn't chasing Raymond Lasker anymore. She was chasing herself. Morning broke slow and gray over the smoldering ruins of Queens General Hospital. The fire had eaten through everything: walls, ceilings, paper truth. What was left hissed and steamed in the early light like the city itself was trying to breathe out the poison. Detective Lena Moretti stood behind the police line, smoke curling around her coat. The sky above looked bruised, the same color as her eyes after 30 hours without sleep. Reporters shouted from behind the barricade, microphones raised like weapons. "Detective Moretti, is it true the suspect was killed in the fire? Are you related to the victim, Emily Hart? Were you aware of your connection to the case before reopening it?" She said nothing. The lieutenant pushed through the crowd to reach her. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. "I was born here," she answered. "Might as well see it burn." He looked at her hand. "You found something, didn't you?" She opened her fist. A scrap of paper, edges black and curled from flame. One word survived, written in heavy ink: "daughter." "That's all that's left," she said. Everything else turned to ash. Then maybe it's over. She looked at him sharply. No, it's beginning again. He sighed. Lena listened to me. Raymond Lasker's dead. Frank's dead. Emily's dead. Every name in that file is gone. What more do you want? The one name that wasn't there, she said, the one he burned. Her voice was steady, but her heart was a drum in her chest. She could feel it. There was still someone out there. Someone who'd watched from the edges while everyone else took the blame. She walked away before he could stop her. The crime scene tape flapped in the wind behind her like a warning she'd already ignored. That afternoon, she sat alone in the precinct archives room, the same place where the case first came alive months ago. Everything looked smaller now. She spread the remains of the hospital files across the table, half-melted microfilm water-damaged police reports, a cracked photo frame. Inside the frame, a group picture from 2001, the original NYPD task force on the Hart homicide. 4 faces. One of them was Raymond Lasker, one was Frank, one was Emily, and one a man she didn't recognize. He stood slightly apart, smiling thinly at the camera, the name scrawled beneath in faded ink, Captain E. Monroe. She searched the database. Edwin Monroe, retired 2004, last known address upstate near Albany. No forwarding contact. The file showed something else. Monroe had signed the original crime scene closure report in 2002. He'd declared the Hart case unsolvable. But a note buried in the margin caught her eye, a reference number tied to an old adoption record. File hash 42317A. The word daughter. Her pulse spiked. She logged into the state adoption registry. The system was slow old, still running on code from another century. She entered the number. The screen blinked once. Then a name appeared. Adoptive guardian Captain Edwin Monroe. Child Lena Hart, infant. She froze. The room tilted. The sound of the ceiling fan became deafening. He hadn't just worked the case. He'd taken her. The road to Albany was long and silent. The highway cut through the forests like a scar, the trees leaning inward, whispering secrets she couldn't hear. She drove fast headlights, slicing the dusk. The radio stayed off. The only sound was the engine and the voice in her head repeating what Raymond had said before he died. You'll finish what I started. By the time she reached the address, the sun was gone. A 2-story cabin sat alone at the edge of the woods, windows glowing faintly. The air smelled like pine and smoke. She parked at the end of the gravel path and stepped out slowly, hand resting on her holster. The porch creaked beneath her boots. She knocked once. The door opened halfway. A man stood there, older now, his hair-white face lined like old paper, but the eyes were sharp, the same as in the photo. Same as in the... Detective Moretti, he said, as if he'd been expecting her. Or should I say, Lena. She didn't answer. He smiled faintly. Come in. You must be freezing. Inside the cabin was filled with the smell of coffee and old wood. On the mantel above the fireplace photographs, Emily, Frank, even Raymond, all framed, neatly dusted, displayed like family. He poured coffee into 2 mugs. You came for answers. I came for the truth, she said. He nodded. Then sit. You deserve it. She stayed standing. You were the lead on my mother's case. Yes, and your guardian after? There was no one else. You falsified the record, she said. I protected you. His tone was calm, almost paternal. The department was corrupt. They wanted to close the file, bury it with Frank and Emily both. I couldn't let that happen. So I took you, changed your name, made sure no one could touch you. Why? He looked at her over the rim of his cup. Because you were special. You survived what should have killed you. She felt the chill creep up her spine. You were there that night. He didn't deny it. I arrived before backup. Frank was gone. Emily was dying. She had you in her arms. I promised her you'd never know. Never know what? That the system she trusted killed her as much as Raymond did. Her jaw tightened. You're lying. He leaned back, eyes narrowing. Maybe. Or maybe you've been lying to yourself. You think you became a detective because you wanted justice. But no. You became one because the past needed a new witness. He stood slowly, stepped closer. I watched you grow. I watched you chase ghosts. You never stopped being the little girl who opened her eyes to a world already broken. You just put on a badge to make it look clean. She raised her weapon. You're under arrest for obstruction, falsification, and kidnapping. He smiled again, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. And who will you tell? The department that used me to erase a case that embarrassed the city. The same one that erased your mother's name from every report. They'll bury you too. Her finger tightened on the trigger. Try me. He didn't move. You're more like Raymond than you think. He wanted to burn the evidence. You want to become it. Where is she? Lena's voice cracked. Where's my mother's body? He hesitated. Not where they buried her. Then where? He turned toward the window, the reflection of the fire dancing across his face. Out there, he said softly, under the road that leads here. They built the highway right over her grave. You drive past her every day. The silence between them felt endless. Then, without turning, he said, You can kill me if it helps, but it won't change what's underneath you. Her hand trembled. He turned slowly to face her again. You wanted closure. There it is. For a long second, neither of them moved. The fire crackled. Somewhere outside, a wolf howled. Then Lena lowered the gun. You're right, she said quietly. Killing you won't change it. She walked toward the door. He didn't stop her. But as she stepped onto the porch, he called after her. Lena. She turned. If you dig her up, you'll dig up everything the city buried with her. She didn't answer. The night swallowed her as she walked back to the car, her reflection flashing in the glass like a stranger. The road stretched out before her, the same one he said ran over her mother's grave. The headlights flared. The engine started. As she drove, the rain began again, soft at first, then harder, like 1,000 tiny fists beating against the roof. Somewhere under those wet black miles of asphalt, her mother slept. And somewhere above it, her daughter was learning to wake the dead. Night fell heavy over Queens, the kind of night that presses down until every sound feels muffled, every breath too loud. Crescent Avenue glistened under the sodium lights, slick from rain, the same street that had witnessed 1,000 quiet tragedies. Detective Lena Moretti parked her car 2 blocks away and sat in silence, staring at the yellow glow reflecting off the asphalt. The highway loomed above her, now rebuilt, resurfaced, repainted a monument to everything the city tried to forget. She stepped out, rain spitting in thin sheets against her face. The hum of passing cars overhead vibrated through the air like a mechanical heartbeat. She followed the shoulder down to where the road curved under the bridge, the place where Emily Hart's story had ended. The place Monroe said she'd been buried. No police, no press, no witnesses this time. Just Lena, the dark, and the voice that wouldn't leave her head. You drive past her every day. She traced her hand along the cold concrete barrier. Someone had scrawled graffiti in fading paint letters half erased by time. Remember me. The words looked fresh under the rain. She crouched, low flashlight, sweeping across the ground. The gravel glittered water pooling in shallow cracks. Beneath one of them, something metallic caught the beam. She brushed away the dirt. A fragment of jewelry, a chain, thin, delicate, the kind worn beneath hospital scrubs. Her breath caught. She recognized it from the crime scene photo Emily's necklace. She didn't need to dig. The earth itself was handing her the truth. A car passed above tires, hissing through puddles. The light from the headlights flashed across the road and revealed it, a faint outline beneath the surface asphalt, a patch darker than the rest. The shape of a cross. Her phone buzzed, breaking the silence. Unknown number again. One message. You found her. Now find yourself. No signature, no trace, but she knew who it was, or maybe she didn't. Raymond was dead. Monroe was alive, but the words sounded like neither. She looked back down at the necklace, still glinting through the rain. The chain wasn't just metal, it was tether. Proof that the truth had been paved over layer by layer until it looked like history instead of homicide. She took a step back, staring at the cross-shaped scar on the road. Beneath it lay everything the city had built on lies. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. She left you something. The text was followed by an address. Hudson Storage Unit 47. Her pulse quickened. The last lead. The end of the labyrinth. Hank. The drive took 40 minutes. The rain chased her the whole way. The city blurred into streaks of neon and memory, and the wipers could barely keep up. Hudson Storage sat near the river, surrounded by warehouses and silence. The guard booth was empty. The gate was open. She parked under a flickering light and approached the row of units' numbers painted white on steel. The place smelled like rust and salt. Unit 47 waited at the far end padlock broken door slightly ajar. She drew her weapon, pushed it open. The inside was dark, but not empty. A desk, a single lamp, and on the desk, a box, wooden small, carved with initials E.H. Her mother's again. She opened it slowly. Inside, a stack of letters wrapped in twine, their edges yellowed with age. On top, a photograph. Emily Hart holding a baby. Behind her stood Monroe, younger, clean-shaven, smiling too wide. Her stomach turned. She untied the bundle. The first letter was dated October 2001. The handwriting was Emily's. Frank doesn't know. I can't tell him. The baby isn't his. The real father works with me. He said he could protect us, but now he's different. I think he's watching me. If something happens, I'm leaving this for her to find, my daughter. The next letter was addressed to Captain Monroe. You said you'd help me, but now you scare me. Please stop coming by the hospital. Please stop calling the house. Lena's pulse hammered in her ears. She flipped through the rest, each one darker, more desperate. I can't sleep. I hear someone outside every night. Frank is drinking again. He says someone's following him. If you find this, it means he found me first. The last letter was written in hurried, uneven strokes. Ink smudged words, breaking mid-line. He's here. I can hear him downstairs. If I don't make it out, tell her the truth. Tell her Monroe is... The sentence ended there, the paper torn. Lena stared at it, every nerve in her body screaming. Monroe, not Frank, not Raymond. Her mother hadn't been killed by a jealous husband or a vengeful brother. She'd been silenced by the man who claimed to protect her, the man who had stolen her child to hide his crime. The door behind her creaked. She turned, gun raised. Monroe stood in the doorway, his face ghostly, under the single light. I hoped you'd find that, he said quietly. You killed her. He nodded once. Yes. Why? Because she was going to ruin everything. She wanted to tell the truth. He stepped closer, eyes wet but cold. I built this city's illusion, detective. The perfect family, the perfect closure, the perfect lie, and you were part of it. You were proof that I could rewrite death itself. She shook her head, backing toward the desk. You stole my life. I gave you one, he said. Without me, you'd be a footnote, another dead nurse, another closed case. You murdered my mother. His smile faltered. And you still wear my badge. Her gun didn't waver, not for long. He sighed. You'll shoot me. They'll call you a hero, then they'll bury the story again. You'll never get justice, only headlines. I don't want headlines, she said. I want the truth. He opened his hands, then take it. She hesitated. He stepped into the light. Go on. And for a moment, she saw him as he was not a monster, not a cop. Just a man hollowed out by the weight of what he'd built. A man who thought lies could outlive guilt. Her finger hovered over the trigger. He smiled sadly. You really are her daughter. Then, before she could react, he reached for the lamp. Not a gun, just the cord. He yanked it. Sparks flying, igniting the curtain behind him. Flames leapt up instantly, devouring the papers, the wood, the truth. Lena fired once. The shot hit the desk, the box exploding into splinters. Monroe staggered back, smoke curling around him. Too late, he whispered. It's already burning. She lunged forward, trying to save the letters, but the fire was faster. She dragged the last page free, the edge blackened. Monroe collapsed against the wall, coughing, laughing weakly through the smoke. This is how stories end, he said. Not with justice, with ashes. By the time she pulled him out into the rain, his pulse was gone. The fire hissed under the downpour, leaving only the smell of smoke and regret. Lena stood in the mud-soaked shaking, staring at the single page left in her hand. The bottom half was burned, but 2 words still remained scrawled in her mother's handwriting. She knows. She looked out at the skyline across the river. The city glittered like it had never sinned. But beneath those lights, every street, every building, every story was built on the same foundation: blood, secrets, and silence. And now she knew. She folded the paper carefully and slipped it into her pocket and walked away from the fire without looking back. For the first time in her life, she wasn't chasing ghosts. She was carrying them. And somewhere deep in the city's heartbeat, she heard her mother's voice again, faint, defiant, alive. Remember me. The rain fell harder, erasing her footprints one by one, but the truth was already awake. And it wasn't going back to sleep. Nains and ver. Morning slid in under a low ceiling of cloud, turning the river the color of lead. By the time Detective Lena Moretti left Hudson Storage, The sirens were gone. The smoke had thinned, and the city was pretending again that nothing had happened. The rain had rinsed the blood, the soot, the names, but not the noise inside her head. At headquarters the next day, the corridors smelled of burned paper and coffee. Cameras crowded the front steps. Detective Moretti. "Did you kill Captain Monroe?" "Is it true?" he confessed. "Are you the missing child from the Hart case?" She pushed through without a word. Every flash of a bulb felt like lightning, brief, blinding, merciless. Inside the conference room, her badge and weapon waited on the table. Her lieutenant stood beside them, sleeves rolled up, eyes tired. "You know the rules," he said. "When a superior officer dies in your presence, I didn't kill him, I know. But the department needs a narrative, Lena. They need this to end." "Then end it," she said. He hesitated. "IA's filing the report as a containment incident, accidental fire. Monroe died a hero, trying to protect evidence." Lena almost laughed. "They're canonizing him. They're protecting the badge. And you!" She looked down at her hands, black under the nails scarred from heat. "You think this protects me?" He lowered his voice. "You burned their history, Lena. Half the city's cold case archives are gone. Nobody knows what really happened down there except you. Then let me tell them." He shook his head. "They don't want the truth. They want peace." She left the badge on the table. "Then give them silence." And that evening, her apartment was a museum of ghosts. The walls still pinned with photographs, Emily Frank Raymond Monroe. She sat on the floor surrounded by fragments from the fire, the half-burned letter, the necklace, the silver button, and the digital recorder she'd grabbed without even realizing. The recorder blinked once battery low, but still alive. She pressed play. A burst of static, then a woman's breath, her mother's voice. "If you're hearing this, it means he found me. Don't hate Frank. Don't trust Monroe. And if Raymond is still alive, run." The sound of footsteps, a door, a gasp, then softer. "Lena, you were born into the dark, but you don't belong there. You're not his mistake. You're my mercy." The tape clicked off. Lena sat perfectly still. Outside, a siren wailed somewhere deep in the city, high, distant, fading. She rewound it, played it again, memorized every word. Not his mistake, her mercy. The city lights flickered against the rain-streaked glass. Every reflection looked like another version of her officer-daughter survivor orphan evidence. She opened her laptop, logged into the internal NYPD network one last time. The screen asked for her credentials. Detective L. Moretti, access level revoked. She smiled faintly. Figures. But there was another path, the same one the press used. Public archives, anonymous uploads. She dragged the audio file into a folder labeled simply EH attached. The scanned letters, the adoption forms, the photo of Monroe and Emily. Then she clicked upload. For a second, nothing happened. Then the progress bar crawled forward, blue against black. When it hit 100%, she closed the lid. By dawn, the world had changed again. The file spread faster than Rumor Cop forums, journalist servers, social feeds. The truth was no longer a case file, it was a contagion. Monroe's hero story collapsed before lunch. The department issued denials, corrections, condolences. Politicians called it a tragedy of errors. Talk shows called it the story that rebuilt New York. And in every broadcast, one photo appeared again and again, Emily Hart smiling beside a newborn, the caption reading, "The mother who refused to disappear." Lena spent that night on the roof of her building, the city flickering below like static. For the first time in months, she let the rain fall without moving. Every drop felt earned. Her phone buzzed once. Unknown number, a text. "Truth survives. R?" Her breath caught. She typed back, "You're dead." 3 dots appeared, then vanished. She waited. Nothing. Maybe it was a ghost. Maybe it was the living refusing to stay buried. She looked down at the silver button in her hand, the circle unbroken. It had belonged to no one and everyone. A witness, silent, incorruptible. Below her, the city pulsed. Sirens, horns, thunder. She could almost hear her mother's last whisper riding on the wind. "Remember me." Lena slipped the button into her pocket and whispered back, "I will." Then she walked down the stairwell, back into the noise, into the light, into whatever waited next. The rain stopped the next evening, but the city still felt wet with memory. The streets shone like mirrors reflecting lights that looked too bright, too clean. Queens never sleeps, especially. Not when it smells a story. By the time Detective Lena Moretti, former detective, now technically stepped back onto Crescent Avenue, the news vans were gone. Only a few candles remained. Wax puddled around the lamppost where Emily Hart had died 24 years earlier. Someone had written, "Thank you, Lena," on a cardboard sign and taped it to the fence. The wind tugged at it gently, as if the city itself wasn't sure how to say it. She walked past the pawn shop, past the cracked sidewalk, to the exact spot where the first photograph had been taken, the one that began everything. The same streetlight blinked its strange rhythm, red, red, green. For a long time, she just stood there listening to the hum of traffic on the overpass. The highway Monroe had built was still open cars rushing over a grave no one could see. Each set of tires whispered the same thing as it passed. Forget. She whispered back, not anymore. In her pocket, her phone buzzed once. A new message. No number again. She'd be proud. She stared at it, heart tight. Then another line appeared. Look east. She turned. Across the avenue, in the window of the old diner, a shape moved, a figure in a gray coat, head bowed, hair silver in the light. Her breath caught. Raymond impossible. The fire had taken him. The DNA confirmed it. And yet, she crossed the street, slowly, eyes fixed on the window. The figure lifted its head. A faint smile. Then the reflection flickered with a passing car's light and was gone. The diner was empty. Only her own reflection remained older, steadier, haunted. Maybe ghosts don't need bodies. Maybe they just need witnesses. 2 weeks later, she found herself back in Albany, sitting in a sterile government building that smelled like dust and air conditioning. The clerk handed her a thin envelope marked Vital Records Reissue. Inside, her new birth certificate. Mother Emily Hart, father unknown. She signed the line that said, "Acknowledged by adult subject," and when the pen left the paper, she felt something shift. Not relief, just finality. The last chain snapping loose. "Do you want to keep the old name or return to the original?" the clerk asked. She hesitated. "Both," she said. "They both deserve to live." He nodded, typed something, handed her a second envelope, 2 documents, 2 lives. Outside, the wind was sharp clean. She walked to the riverbank, tore the first envelope open, and let the papers scatter into the current, watching as her old name, Lena Moretti, blurred and sank. The second she kept. And back in the city, the fallout kept spreading. Internal Affairs reopened half a dozen cases Monroe had touched. Reporters dug into old unsolveds that suddenly looked deliberate. Emily Hart became a symbol, an icon for victims lost inside the bureaucracy. They called Lena, sometimes asked her to comment. She never did. Her voice belonged elsewhere now. Instead, she joined the cold case unit again, not as detective, but as consultant. Off the books. Quiet. Her first case was a missing person file from 1999. When the junior officers asked why she took it, she just said, "Because time doesn't close cases." People do. Mary. That night, she walked home along the river. The skyline shimmered the city, breathing in neon and smoke. Somewhere deep inside those towers, another secret was already forming, another story waiting for a name. She stopped at the bridge and leaned on the railing. The current below carried the last scraps of her old life downstream. From her coat pocket, she pulled the silver button, the circle that had survived fire, rain, and truth. She turned it once in her fingers. The metal was smooth now, edges worn down by everything it had witnessed. She held it to the light. For a second, it flashed like a signal. Then she let it fall. The sound it made, small, clean, final, was swallowed by the river. She whispered rest. And for the first time, the city seemed to listen. The wind went still. The water calmed. The lights above her stopped flickering. When she walked away, her shadow followed quietly behind her, long, steady, unbroken. Endure. Voiceover final scene. Some cases don't end when the killer dies. Some end when the city finally remembers what it tried to forget. The streets keep their secrets. But sometimes, if you listen hard enough, they give one back. This one took 24 years, 4 names, and 1 truth too heavy for the living. But the truth doesn't care who carries it. It only wants to be known. My name was Detective Lena Moretti. My mother was Emily Hart. The case is closed for now.